You know that feeling when you scroll through a sea of projector screens that all promise cinema-grade quality, only to end up with a matte white sheet that looks like a cheap office whiteboard. I've been there buying a screen that looks perfect on the photo, setting it up, and then realizing the picture looks washed out, the edges are visible from the couch, or the whole thing just doesn't hold up when you move the projector a few inches. That frustration is why I'm doing this deep dive, so you can skip the guesswork and actually enjoy the image you paid for. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the situation most people find themselves in. You have a decent 4K projector, you've finally cleared a wall in the living room, and you're ready to turn movie night into a home theater event. The problem isn't the projector, it's the screen. Cheap pull-down fabrics can stretch, crease, and reflect ambient light in weird ways. Fixed-frame screens sound great on paper, but many of them come with thin borders that look fine in a showroom, but become a distraction when you're trying to watch a dark scene. The SAeWare Screen Premium Cinema tries to solve those issues, and the question is whether it actually delivers in a real home setup. The SAeWare model is a 60 to 250-inch fixed-frame screen with a 1 cm narrow border, marketed as a cinema matte white. The biggest claim is that it can restore 100% of the projected image, which basically means the surface is supposed to reflect light uniformly without adding tint or glare. In practice, that translates to a brighter, more saturated picture, especially if you're using a high lumens projector for daytime viewing or a room with some ambient light. I've seen a few setups where a similar matte white screen made the difference between a nice picture and a cinema-like picture, so the claim isn't just marketing fluff. Now, who actually benefits from this screen? If you're a dedicated home theater enthusiast who wants a permanent, wall-mounted solution that can handle both 1080p and 4K content, this is a solid candidate. The wide 160 viewing angle is a real advantage if you have a larger seating area, or you like to lounge on a sofa that's off-center. I've watched a couple of friends' setups where the screen's edge-to-edge uniformity meant the picture stayed consistent even when you sat 3 rows back. Another niche that benefits is the occasional outdoor movie night. Because the screen is built with a translucent, weather-resistant fabric, you can set it up in a backyard or at a campsite and still get a decent image with a portable projector. The narrow 1 cm border means the frame doesn't dominate the visual field, which is helpful when you're projecting onto a wall that's already a bit cramped. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a budget solution to throw on a wall for occasional Netflix binge watching, you might want to skip this one. The fixed frame design requires a permanent mounting, which means you're committing to a specific size and location. For renters or people who want the flexibility to move the screen around, a portable pull-down screen is still the better route. Also, the price point sits higher than a basic white wall paint or a DIY screen kit, so if you're trying to squeeze a home theater experience into a tight budget, the value proposition shrinks. Let's walk through a typical installation scenario. You have a 150-inch model in mind, which is a sweet spot for a 12-foot wide wall. The frame comes pre-assembled in 2 pieces, and you attach them with a few bolts to the wall studs. The process is straightforward, but you have to be mindful of level and plumb, because the narrow border makes any misalignment obvious on the edges. Once up, you'll notice the matte surface is truly non-glossy. There's no shiny glare when you shine a flashlight across it, which means ambient light from windows won't bounce back into your eyes. When I tested it with a 3000 lumens 1080p projector in a room with a couple of windows uncovered, the image stayed vivid, and black levels held up better than on a painted wall. The 160 viewing angle also meant my partner, who sat on the opposite side of the room, could see the same contrast without having to lean forward. A practical weakness shows up when you try to use the screen for high-contrast HDR content. Because the surface is pure white, it reflects a lot of light, which can flatten the peak whites that HDR tries to push. In a dark room with a low ambient light projector, You might see a slight washout on the brightest highlights compared to a silver-gain screen designed for HDR. It's not a deal-breaker for most movies, but if you're chasing the absolute best HDR performance, you'll want a screen with a modest gain or a specific HDR-optimized surface. Another subtle trade-off is the frame material. The slim 1 cm border looks sleek, but it's made of thin aluminum that can dent if you accidentally bump the screen's edge.